This is what it is, okay? I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now, you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Welcome to the 28th episode of the Deployment Dojo. This is a live show where we introduce and discuss software installation topics using the WiX Toolset. I'm your host, Rob Mensching, and joining me again is my very good friend and still first student of the dojo, David Edson. David, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Hi.
All right. So we have a lot of stuff to do, kind of like we did last week. We ended up with a lot of stuff to do.
Right.
We're in services, right? We're in the services. We have created our system service, and we are trying to now, I guess we were cleaning up after ourselves last week, right?
Right.
And then we tried to get it so we were not as susceptible to being attacked, or at least reducing our attack surface, right?
Right.
Right. So you asked me, I think after the show, you're like, why does WiX and all this stuff default to the most powerful system service available as your default? Shouldn't we default to something not as powerful so someone has to opt into something more powerful? Right. And the answer to that is, that's a very good point. We probably should not default to the most powerful thing. Now, it would be a breaking change, so people that were used to not specifying everything and getting the most powerful system service that you can have would suddenly be broken. But it might be a thing for us to do in the future, to think about, because the fundamental truth is a local service is the best option if you're picking a service, at least to start from, because as we saw, it has a lot less privileges than the system did.
Right.
All right. Bert, great to have you again. You made the WiX meeting yesterday, I think. And Martin, good to have you back. And Robson, welcome for the first time. Dave, we've been people coming on, and actually someone has been leaving a comment. I think they said, I'm going to go back to the very beginning and watch every single episode up to here. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's like they have a little bit of a completionist streak in them, like me. You got to get every single side quest. They're all out there for you. 28 episodes. Yeah, you got to get 100% completion. Exactly. Go for it. All right. So 27 episodes. We're going to add another one today, and we're going to keep going. All right. So let's dig into that. Local service has surprised me because I had forgotten how little access it had to the machine. Because I was thinking, honestly, when we just threw it on at the end, I was like, oh, cool, we'll just make this local service and everything would work. And if you remember when we did that, suddenly it couldn't write the data file to program files folder anymore, right? So local service really doesn't have access to anything that's considered important on the machine, which makes a lot of sense, which is great, because that means we can take our service, run it as local service, and then grant it the access that it needs to work, as opposed to have it saying, I can do anything on your machine. Instead, it's going to be just the folders or the reg keys or the various pieces that we need, nothing extra.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
It's the start with no privileges, secure and no privileges being the same in this case, and then add as you need to, because you cannot remove all the privileges when you start a system. Like, you just have too much power, and trying to get rid of all of it is too much. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. And it turns out I actually had to do a little bit of this ahead of time, because I haven't done a lot of the permission stuff in quite a while. And there's a couple different ways of doing permissions, and I think I picked one of the harder ways through it, but the more powerful ways. So we have a bit of things to do here to get done today. Should we jump into it?
Let's do it.
All right, into the belt test. We're going to get this open, and I will create our branch. This is episode 28, right?
Right, 28.
Yeah. All right, new branch. Episode 20. Hey, look, it doesn't ask me if I remember to not edit any files. Do you want to bring all these files along? All right, episode 28. And the first thing we always do, go into the build GUI and update the version number in our build command so that if you build and you follow along on our CI systems, that you're good to go there. Okay, that's the build command. We're all kind of set up here. Should I do it? Yeah, let me go ahead and get the submit that. There we go. Stage those changes. Start episode 28. I changed the title of this for any of you that were watching along earlier. This is permission to come aboard using local service. That's what we're going to be doing. Lots of permission work in here. All right, I'm on my branch. I'm set up with the build number. Let's jump into the challenges. All right. So the issue is, I didn't leave it where it was. Okay, so we need to go back into our service install and put back local system here. So,
okay.
What was it? Forgot. Did I not leave it here? I did not leave it here. Account, NT authority, local service. I think that was what it was, right?
Yeah,
off the top of my head.
Sure. Yeah, with the space in there.
This is honestly something that we probably should have an alias in WiX, so you can just say local service and we'll know that you mean NT authority. There are those kind of things built into Windows in a lot of cases. So I should have remembered to do that. All right, cool. Why don't we go ahead and build this real quick and get our sandbox up and running.
All right.
And know that we have things going. All right, build is started. Build is done. Open up the sandbox. It'll open up on this window over here. All right. We're going to do an install as soon as all our windows pop up real quick and just see that we will have our service up in services. It's not there right now. Bin x86 debug enus. Install the belt test. See it create our folder. There's our Windows service. Refresh here. There's our Windows service, but we don't see our file being created. And if we look at our service, hopefully it is started. It is running. And where is the account? Log on as local service. There you go. See, it gives a nice friendly name here. And this password is like, the system is managing all that, so we don't actually have a password.
Right.
All right. Cool. So that looks good, right?
Right.
Right. All right. I think that's good. All right. So now that is good, as in when we open the console app, it says, hey, I can't find this file because the service can't write. All right. So by default, you can't write to a directory, right? Because as we saw, the local service has no permissions to write underneath program files folder. And the service by default will write its file right here. So how about we try to give it some permissions?
All right.
Enter the first challenge. All right, uninstall this thing and let it go. Let it go. All right, cool. Now, I'm going to start doing this the wrong way, or at least the way that we should talk about, and then we can talk about why it's the wrong way and then change it going forward. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we are in this component. Components are the thing that install things. We have all of our service configuration here. We also have been cleaning up, which is what we did that last episode. And there's our file. So what we want to do is to grant access to local service to this directory so that we can write the file right here. Does that make sense?
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So we can hey, well, we need to put, this is where the file goes. So we need to give it access. Now, by default, WiX, all components have a directory. It's inheriting the install folder right now. And by default, WiX will make sure that this component, if it needs to, it creates its directory for us, right? But in this case, we actually want to refer to the directory where the component is being installed because we want to set permissions on it. And the way you do that is you turn on, you say, hey, I would like to explicitly say create folder. Now, technically, you can, using this, create other folders. Use this component to go off and create, directories all over the place. In this case, we're going to set the permissions on the directory that we're in, which is install folder. So we don't need anything other than, hey, I need to get a hold of this create folder. Does that make sense? Right?
Yes, it makes sense.
Right. So I'm basically saying normally WiX will handle this automatically for me, but because I want to add something to it, namely I want to add some permissions to it, I have to bring it out of the shadows and explicitly call it out here. All right, so now that I have it, there's a few things I can add underneath this here. I could add a shortcut to this, which doesn't make any sense because service, but I could also set permissions on it. And there are two different permission mechanisms available, the old permission element and then the permission EX element. EX being one of Windows 32's favorite way of saying adding. This is like this, but version 2. So permission EX is permission with additional features.
Okay.
This is only available in Windows Installer 5.0, I should point out, but Windows Installer 5.0 is built into Windows 7, which basically means any operating system that is still supported can use these new features. All right.
Okay.
All right. All right. Now, you can specify ID. That's optional. You can specify conditions. So you could say, hey, let's not always install these permissions. And the important part here is the security descriptor definition language, also known as SDDL. This is a whole nother language of how to do set permissions on things. It is extremely powerful. You can define all sorts of things in it. It is also cryptic as it is nuts. It is cryptic. So I actually tried to go in and before the show, because I was like, oh, I got to remember the SDDL syntax because it's been so long since I worked with it. And I went in and started having chat GPT on Bing conversation saying, can you remind me how to set the ACLs on this thing with this syntax and all these kinds of things? And it gave me some syntax. And pretty much like everybody says, you have to be careful because chat GPT is completely happy to lie to you. And while this is in the right direction, it is not correct. All right, so I'm going to put the correct one here, and then I'm going to show you how I got it.
Okay.
All right.
And this is for stuff like putting full control or modify or read or whatever permissions.
You
right?
nailed it. So I'm going to break this down real quick because when you know how to read it, it's not terrible if you know what you're looking. All right. So this D is saying set an access DACL, which is I forgot what the D stands for, an access control list. So a direct access control list. I can't remember what the D means right now.
Whatever D. Yeah.
Right. So it's basically saying set these permissions on this thing, and this thing being the folder is what we're talking about here. This AI means inherit these attributes. So the things that go into it, inherit these attributes to things that you create from there. Now, when you're creating this DACL, this is an allow. So inside this parentheses, we're going to have several of these and build it up. So in here, we're going to say allow and inherit this allowance of all file access to local service.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to say, hey, give local service full access to this directory for file operations. All right. So if I did all this correctly, that means that we should be giving local service, which our service is all, access to write and delete files inside this folder. Sounds like what we want, right? We want to create a folder. All right. Then also I grant full access to the built-in administrators. This is important because if you end up removing your built-in administrators, you can get to a point where you don't own the directory anymore and you can't see it. You can always take over, but it's kind of a mess. And then this last part was the hard part. And this is authenticated users. So anybody logged in, and this number was a number that took me the longest to figure out. So let's go ahead and build this and see if it does what we think it's going to do, which is set all these ACLs on this folder. All right.
Okay. For local service.
For local service, built-in administrators, and authenticated users.
Yeah, right.
All right. We're going to do a build. Then we're going to spin up our... Oh, I left it up running. This should be fine. Okay. Wait for it to finish. It finished. And let's go to Sandbox and install again. And hopefully it works. Whew. All right. And here we are. There's deployment Dojo build test. And look, we have a file now.
All right.
Yay. And if we run our console app, we will see it's now counting. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to let that leave that there. All right. So what did we do? We set the permissions on this folder right here.
Okay.
So if I go to properties inside this, and this will be small for all of you following along, you'll notice that we have authenticated users, we have local service, and we have administrators. Cool. which is what we said. Built-in administrators, full access. Authenticated users get read access, and local service ends up, it looks like full control, but oh yeah, and local service gets full control because that's what we gave it, right?
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
It is a little strange how to do it, but yes.
Okay. Well, hopefully
the SDDL.
The
syntax,
SDDL. Yeah. So you're like, all right, Rob. So how do you figure this out?
Yeah, I was Googling on the side on Windows SDDL syntax and looking at it.
And you'll end up deep in this documentation that has tremendous amounts of data. Let me show you the cheat because chat didn't help me. You bring up a command prompt. We'll go into program files folder, our 32-bit one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come on, try to get this window up here. Okay, do a dir. There's our deployment directory belt test. There's this tool. There's a couple of them. I'm going to use this one, CALCS, which is basically calculate ACLs. ACLs are the access list control, something like that. Make sure, no, ACLs. There we go. All right. And it's like, all right, cool. So what do? You give it a file name and then all these switches. And it turns out one of these switches is display the SDDL for the string. So what you do is you go into your folder, you use this properties, you use this UI to edit this, where you edit, you add more users, you remove users, whatever you need to do. And then when you get it done, you do cackles, the name of our folder, and then /s, please. And it spits out something that looks, oh my gosh, look at that. It's identical to the syntax that I put over here.
Oh, okay.
Right. And why does it look identical? Because I copied it before this. All right. So, and I bring this up because, believe it or not, I was reading the documentation. ChatGPT and I were having a chat. That was redundant. Anyway, and this part right here, this number, I kept trying to get the appropriate FA and FR and all those kinds of things in here. And this number is obviously a bit field of a whole bunch of these things. And I couldn't figure out how to get that would allow me to give read access correctly to everybody else. So in the end, when I came down here and said, oh, I'll just set it correctly so it works, get the answer back, and poof, I was like, nobody was giving me that number.
Right.
And if we go and look up this number on the internet, you can actually take that number, go look on the internet, and you'll see it's a conglomeration of several things that we need access. And it's not just read, it's a couple extra things. All right. So this is the magic trick. If you need to create these sort of things and you have the UI that you can go in, go set the UI you want and then generate this. And then you can kind of read your way through this.
Gotcha.
Cool?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So why did we do all of this? Right? We did all of this so that we could grant local service access to this folder. Right?
Right.
And keep access to the things that need it, namely, or grant more access for local service, basically full access, and then keep the built-in administrators having access, and then authenticated users need to have this one. What do you think happens if we take this off?
I'm not sure with local service. I mean, it should. I don't think it's always the principle of what the least restrictive.
Yep.
Security gets through. So I probably local service will not be able to access it, but I'm not sure.
This is authenticated users. AU is authenticated users at the end. So I just did a build. I think I just did a build. Yep, where we have authenticated users removed from this. All right. So let's go ahead and remove our previous install. Uninstall, please. Yes. Oh, console app is running. Yeah, please close that for me. Thank you. Windows installer, close the app for me that we left running. Now I'll do a refresh. Our service is gone. All right, so we're back to uninstalled. Look, and if we look in our folder, hey, look, deployment Dojo kit. Everything's working, right? We did an install. The file was there. We uninstalled, got cleaned up. Everything's great. This is great progress, right? We're finally getting kind of this point, and now we're trying to lock down our app so that we are our service so that we don't have lots and lots of too many permissions to the machine, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's do another install. All right. And this isn't going to work. My demo's not going to work. I forgot. Anyway, if we look at security, we will see now, look, there's only local service and administrators. All right.
Okay.
So we remove the authenticated users. And when I go in here, I was going to say, oh, look, and it doesn't work. But it does work. Do you know why it works? Do you remember? Special attribute of the sandbox.
No, I don't.
We are always an admin in the sandbox. This is something to
Oh,
remember. It's hard to test normal user permissions in
your
the
user.
sandbox.
I gotcha.
Right? See, I'm not a normal user. I'm like an admin always, which means I always have access to this folder.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So actually what we can do, this is just kind of hack around. I'm doing this so you can kind of see that these permissions are what we're setting. I'm going to take the administrators out. So now our administrators should not have access, but authenticated users should. And I think we're an authenticated user still. Okay.
Okay.
Run this or build it and sandbox uninstall. Did I uninstall it? Yes, I must have. Did I? I guess I did. All right, cool. Build is done back in the background. Run this install again. Oh, cancel. I guess I didn't. Okay. What happened? Oh, we had a file in use when we were running, I think. And so I now need to restart my sandbox real quick. I made a mess of my sandbox here. This is why we run in the sandbox, by the way. So I can just close it, open it up again, and we'll do it again. Things fast. All right, wait for it. It'll come up. So what have we done? We have removed the built-in administrators from having access from this folder. Bin x86, debug enus, do the install. Error writing that for retry. Okay. Oh, actually, no, actually, the problem is in we've removed access from the Windows installer to be able to write the files as well.
Oh, okay.
Right. So we created this folder and then we locked it down. And because we only set read permissions to everybody else and only local service has full access to the directory, we've actually locked out the Windows installer. All right. So that was I didn't actually need to restart. The problem is that we've set the ACLs on this thing so that it can't create the removal. And look, it can't remove it either now. Because we created the path and then we removed access to it. If we look at the security, we'll see that authenticated users only have read access and only local service has full access. All right. So here's a demonstration also that we're able to give local service permissions and remove system from it completely as well. All right. So this is how powerful, I'm going to close this because deleting that's going to be a pain. This is how powerful this SDDL is. You can create directories and all kinds of things that you will not have permissions to. You can like go take ownership of it. It's a real pain. If you run a sandbox, just restart your sandbox. All right.
Right.
All right. That was a fun little digression into permissions. All right. But like I said, we have a problem here. And I don't know if the problem is obvious, but here we are trying to remove permissions and reduce our surface attack area such that if someone got into our service, it could not do that much damage. Do you see what local service can do now that maybe we don't want to let it be able to do? It has full access to our directory, which means it can delete anything in our directory and anything below that directory.
I see.
Does it need to be able to delete all the things in this directory?
No.
No. And so how about we do a little bit of extra work to avoid that problem, which is actually going to then set us up for the next episode. Cool?
Cool. So you're going to go do that in Windows?
Or, David, should we stop here? Maybe we should stop here because this has already been a half hour. We've given a lot of stuff. I have a whole nother set of things. We're going to stop here because we covered enough content today that I think you can kind of go back and digest what we've done here, knowing that, well, what have we done? We've granted access to local service to our install folder, which means local service can destroy our entire app, when really all we wanted it to do was get down to being able to, create this file. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. And now we're local service. So, but hey, we're working again. So this is progress. Now, let me wrap up here. Let's go a little spar. Let's wrap up a little bit, and then because I want to show you something of why all of this would not be a problem at all. But it's a good story, a good lesson from here. So let's go to sparring. Okay. We could avoid all of this work And I've seen this happen in the past. And I should have probably maybe made a bigger deal this at the beginning of the episode. But those of you that watch all the way to the end get this extra tidbit. We're solving a problem trying to set the permissions on this file in the install. But you know who else could set the permissions on this file? The service. The service code itself could create this file with the appropriate ACL such that the service has access to it and oh no, it still needs the directory to write to it. See, heroes, I thought I had a good point and I just proved myself wrong. What I was going to say was that the service can, well, we still have to give it a directory. The point I was going to make is that sometimes you can solve problems inside the applications and you don't need to bring that problem to the install. And this permission, by pulling the permission problem into the install, you saw where if we make a mistake, well, the installer can't uninstall that directory, right? So if you can, keeping the problem inside the application and not having to solve it in the setup, it can be a good thing, all right? And so here I thought I had a perfect example of that when really no, because the service needs permissions to even be able to write the file, to set the access permissions to get started. So never mind. Not as good a lesson as it was. What do we need to do? We need to give permissions to local service because we want to run with the minimal set of permissions possible. And ideally, we don't give it access to all the stuff inside install folder. So what should we do? Next episode, we're going to go put it into a separate folder where it's not where nothing else except that data file lives in, a data folder, and then give the permissions into that spot. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There's a little preview ahead of what we're going to do. And it's going to take us a few steps to get there. And since this episode has already gone about a half hour, I wanted to stop there. Questions then open for the space. Someone asked a question earlier. Someone wants to know how, so asking a general question of how we're going to do this. So there's a lot of people asking about harvesting. Harvesting is on my topic list. We will get there. We just haven't yet. Somehow we got down this path with installs and configuration and all this stuff. So we're kind of exploring this path, and then we'll come back and we will eventually work our way to harvesting. I know a lot of people do that. Oh, Miyoki's here. Great to see you. So, all right. General questions, things, David, ideas.
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Next time, are you still going to use NT Authority local service?
Yes, I'm actually going to check this in. So that's kind of my next step. I suppose I should start checking in here. Let's go ahead and let's save. Yeah, I haven't saved this yet. All right, let's do our diff real quick. So what's our change? We are now running as local service, and I can commit this change because now that we've set the ACLs on our install folder, our service will correctly write to that folder and everything will create working. If you remember, we tried to do this at the last minute in the last episode and then found that things didn't work. And I was like, oh, we should not commit this change, right?
Right.
All right. So use local service to be more secure. That's my message and I'm going with it. Commit that. All right, cool. I guess I can do a pull request here. Is this the button? Push. Is this the button? I always forget.
Is it working this time?
I don't know. Let's push it, see what happens. Initiating push. Yay, create a pull request. It did work. Yay, okay, cool. All right. Other things, David. Things to think about.
No, I guess just the SDDL stuff was a little bit new to me. So is it typically, I like that little program that you had. The where
Cackles?
Did you get that?
That's built into Windows.
Is it? Okay.
There's Cackles, and then there's a new one that has replaced it called iACLs. We'll bring the sandbox. Actually, it's here too. I'm just
it's built in. Okay.
CACLS here, and then it'll actually tell you at the top is now deprecated. Please use iACLs. And I haven't done enough with iACLs to know all of its commands, so I didn't use that today. But both of them are built into Windows, and these can actually be used to modify things. So if you don't want to use the UI to get it right, then you can do this and then get the SDDL back out of it and say, oh, that's the thing I needed.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
so
easiest way if you were going to do it like right now would be go into Windows and just do it there and then come here and run that program against the directory and get the string that you need.
Cackles, the directory name or the file name, because you can do it for a file, and then
sure.
/s to say, hey, give it back to me as SDDL. Because yeah, I haven't written an SDDL string in years, honestly, like years. And so it was I I was like on it. I can't tell you that. I probably spent like 2 hours before this episode, which is a lot of prep work for me, just trying to get that
Oh wow.
right. So it was that is the hard part. Then I remembered, oh, just use the UI, then use this thing to dump it, and that's the best way to get out of it. Or read the documentation, become very familiar with it, read it, and go from there. So I didn't use it. Oh, wait, this is committed, right? Yes. All right. I didn't use it. There's another way you can do this. It's not the newer way, and it's not as powerful. And because I really wanted to show you the one that can do everything, but there is built in the installer the way to kind of say, hey, you can get all these individual rights, and you can specify the user you want to set on it, and so you can kind of take what is in this one string of SDDL and build it up out of all these attributes and all these bits and pieces to create the permission. And then you can have several of these permission elements here for all these different parts. This is the old way of doing it in the Windows installer. It does work if you want to use that, but this is definitely the recommended way of doing descriptions, because it can be so complete. You can specify every single thing you want, even though it's cryptic.
Right.
Yeah, so I wanted to show you this. There is that other permission element, but that one you end up having to do like a lot of trial and error until you finally get the UI to show you what you want, because all these little parts in here, there's a lot of little bits where boom, just say the way you want, dump it back out, you're good to go.
All right.
And in case you're wondering, yeah, ChatGPT does not have enough of a corpus to be able to come back and give you good answers. Although this right here, this part right here that it's showing, D:\AFLS, this part is correct, right? It did get that part correct for local service, full access, and give access. So that was useful, but it tried to tell me then do this, which is not valid SDDL syntax. Like that's just not, like if you put that in there, it doesn't work. So it fell down pretty fast.
Interesting.
Cool. All right, so here we are in permissions, and one of the other things to think about is that if you don't have a service, you usually have a lot fewer permission challenges. Sometimes you have these still, but these are the kinds of challenges you get when you deal with services. You have to think a lot about security and a lot about locking them down, a lot about permissions. So this is a fun rabbit hole for us to go run down, I think. A kind of experience of, wow, look, we got a service, and now look at all the extra work we get because of that. That we could avoid if we just wrote our normal apps, kind of, for the most part.
Right.
Right. Again, I'm trying to dissuade people from saying, ooh, let me go write a Windows service because they're cool and powerful and I can do whatever I want. Yes, but they're also costly in many different ways. Anything else, David? Things on your mind? I think I answered your 2 questions from this week. Was why don't we have access to our directory? And why don't we default to local system? Or why don't we default to local service? And their answer is we should default to local service, and because local service doesn't have the permission, so we have to give it to them. There we go.
Right, but it could break other people because of the way they've been using it.
Yeah, changing it would have to be something like we can't do it in WiX 4. WiX 4 is shipped. It'd have to be something that we would look at doing maybe in like a WiX 5 or WiX 6 and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't know, maybe. Of course, then I say, hey, don't write services. So how much should we invest in an area where you probably shouldn't be doing them anyway? It's one of those things. Given all the other things that we could do in WiX, how much should we invest in an area that we don't really want people using as much? I don't know. But people do use it. I don't know. It's always a challenge. Where do you invest your time in improving the language and all the other things in WiX that we want to do? All right, cool. Well, I think that's where we're at for the day. That was fun. STDL took me a lot longer to remember. So hopefully that trick saves you a lot of time in the future. And we only use it for services. STDL only for services? Yeah, I agree. Oh, and Robson said that this could help him a lot. There should be tooltip hypertext for STDL. Yeah, I don't know what it would take for to interpret this string. Oh, no, it only uses it for services. Interesting. So, all right. That's the world today. We'll be back next week, and we will dig into locking ourselves down a little bit farther, reducing our our space a little bit more, so that we have even a less surface area for attackers to get through. So until then, you guys keep coding. You know I am. Bye.
Yep.